This is blasphemous. Like, I enjoy more.
Hello and welcome back to Toilets Titles. My name is Justin Stevens. I'm back with you for another episode of the Roundtable, the Toilets Titles Roundtable. And I thought for a second that little break-in during the intro was like a sound drop. I was intrigued by it, but now that we've lost George, I'm starting to think that maybe he was glitching. But that happens with the internet down there in Florida, from what I'm hearing. Is that the case, Sean?
I guess. From his internet, yeah, and Jason certainly.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, Andy's back. All right, so we have Sean, we've got George, we've got the Frito Bandito Rich himself, and Joey Clark for another roundtable. So none of the introductions or any of that stuff, because we have a lot going on right now. But first off, show of hands, who all's going to Canton this weekend? Okay, so, oh man, I'm in the top row with the losers over here.
The losers.
With us last year, we had a blast, and I mean, he got COVID. He was sick, which kind of sucked, and I finished off his beer the very first night by accident, and I somehow did not get sick. But
what are you talking about?
You remember that, man? You were like really sick that last day or something like that, and then you ended up testing positive like a week later or something.
No way, not me.
Yeah, it was you. Yeah,
no, the only time I tested positive was COVID maybe like 4 months ago.
Really? All right. Yeah. Well, maybe it wasn't COVID, but you were really sick, man. Remember, like towards the end there, that last day or two? No? Dude. All right. Anyway.
Maybe I was drunk that night.
Away from this conversation, you trust Justin when it comes to the Bandito's health. He knows all.
Well, evidently I don't, because I did drink. Well, I guess maybe I do, because I did drink after him. On you at least remember that, right? Me finishing your beer that first night.
Man, it's all blur. It's all blur.
It's all
I will
good.
say this: it was a great time. I matter of fact, the first time I ever met George too, and everything. But like I said, it was a blast when we were down there. I'm jealous that I'm not able to go this time around and stuff like that, but just life and work and everything. My son's starting a new school. My wife's starting her first job this week. It's just a hectic where I wasn't able to make it this time. So
yep, enjoying that new house. Yep. Trying. All right. Let's move on, gentlemen. We do have a show. We're not just going to sit around and chit chat, but if you would, this show is primarily on all of our live platforms, but make sure you check us out on any of the platforms. We got Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, Podbean, Twitch. When a Family Breaks is our Facebook page, Spotify, and I believe there's a couple more on there that I don't even know to mention. So we're all over the place. Thank you for supporting us. And speaking of supporting us, please check us out on the Patreon, patreon.com/toiletsandtitles. A lot of awesome perks. Our boy John has been in the background all week for the last couple of weeks, even really trying to bump up the perks that we give to our Patreon guys. And as a matter of fact, I don't think it was a Patreon, but it was definitely a supporter. Rich, did you happen to get a T-shirt sent out to that follower that I sent that request about?
No, you did not give me a shirt size yet, and which I only have one shirt size left. So
Chris Hind, and as a matter of fact, he did not respond yet. So let's just send him that one shirt, whatever we got left. That's what he gets, because I asked him like Monday of 6 days ago. So. But anyway, it's all good. Chris, you're going to get the size shirt we got. If it doesn't fit you, make sure you give it to somebody that does, so that they can wear it around and help.
Well, the good thing about it is I think it's double X or triple X. So just wash it about 15 times and it'll get down to your size. So you're good.
Right on. Toiletsandtitles.com. Check out all of our articles and all of that good stuff. Guys, we're going to jump right in it. The very first thing. Oh, yes. Go ahead, Rich.
Hey, one last thing. We don't do this enough. You guys need to follow my man Justin on TikTok. Always dropping some nice knowledge on TikTok. I know we have a lot of TikTok out there. So follow him on here, because we also do our little nuggets on there too. So
yeah, also, if y'all ever wanted to know what it was like to see your grandfather try to figure out TikTok, I'm your guy. Come check me out. But I haven't put anything in a little while, actually. I've just been super busy, but I'm hoping maybe by the time the season starts back up, I might do a little weekly bit.
Hey, Justin, with us going to Canton this coming week, there's definitely going to be some shenanigans on TikTok. I'm just saying.
Okay, I'm sure we can figure something out.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Looking forward to tonight, but I mean, how do we top VIP tour of Cowboys camp from yep, absolutely, Joe. That was unbelievable. Coach did an interview last night. Shoot, I'm blanking. Help me out.
Kyle Yeoman.
Yeah, Kyle Humans from Cowboys camp. Kyle Humans of the Dallas Cowboys. Like, he works for the Dallas Cowboys. He was at Cowboys camp. He was up in the bleachers watching the camp. It was a great interview. A lot of fun. It's always fun to have Humans on. And he's also a great follow on Twitter, by the way. So go check him out at Kyle Humans. Good call, Joe. Let's see. And if you guys notice, I call him Joe, and then our guy down in the corner here, I call him Joey. That's just kind of how it fell.
We got to differentiate somehow.
Yep. So I always call him Joey. We're going to jump into the injuries first, because when we're talking fantasy football, one of the biggest things that can affect us are injuries. I was in a league last season where we drafted early August, and I drafted two of the Ravens running back just in case one of them got hurt, and then they both got hurt along with the next two that I picked up before the season even started. Like, injuries are an absolute killer. So we're going to start off with the injuries and get those out of the way, because unfortunately that is a part of the game, as much as we would like to be able to avoid that. But here down at the bottom, the ticker, guys, that's a list of all the injuries that we know of so far that have any kind of decent significance, plus a couple of guys that may not be as significant for fantasy purposes, but for your team's purposes. But on those injury updates, I'm going to read through a couple of them here and see if there's anything in particular that stands out. James Washington, I think he was slotted to get some decent time for the Cowboys as a wide receiver 4. He got carted off the field. Naji Harris, I mean, he limped off the sidelines. From what I'm hearing, I don't think it's super serious. But, I mean, anytime your number one running back is limping off the field during training camp, it's something to pay attention to. So has anybody heard an update on Naji Harris?
So interesting fact is, look, yeah, we know Naji Harris got hurt and everything, but sometimes, these are good things in training camp and everything. We already know he's going to be the starter and everything. The benefits to this is you get to see who else they have. If you really follow the camp and everything and kind of keep up with the backups and everybody they brought in, this is the opportunity for those people to step up and show what they could do if he does get hurt in the regular season and everything. So as much as it ain't serious from what I'm hearing, but he's been on the sidelines and stuff like that, a little frustrated because he's not out there. He got to go back to getting revamped up and everything and just getting ready to get back out there again. But it's given an opportunity for some of the other guys.
Yeah, it's an ankle sprain. I mean, they're easily one of the things you can get, and then if you don't properly take care of it and let it heal properly, you're more likely to re-injure it again. So them putting him on the sideline and not letting him practice is a good thing. I mean, listen, it's the beginning of August, right? First week of August. I don't expect this to linger into the season unless he goes out and injures it again in preseason or in one of the preseason games. So I'm not overly concerned about it. It's something to monitor for sure, but on a scale of 1 to 10, on my concern, it's like a 2 right now.
Yeah, fair enough. That's also a great point. By the way, Rich, because a lot of people, and also if this is you, shut up. But a lot of people want to talk about why do you have your starters out there playing right now at this point in training camp? They're going to be the starter. You don't want them going in cold. They're going to have torn ligaments, torn hamstrings. But I saw that on Twitter 2 days ago, or whenever it was that Naji went out. My week is all ran together, but I know it seemed like it was 2 days ago. I saw something on Twitter where Naji shouldn't have even been out there practicing. He's your starter. Just let him warm up on the sidelines. Well, yeah, and then he's going to go out in game 1 in real speed, and he's going to pull a hamstring, and he's going to be out for 3 weeks, and it's going to hamper him all season. So
yeah, I agree with George. I mean, we got 4 weeks to go. I'm not concerned about it at all. That guy's not dropping in my expected draft positional value, whatever. he's exactly where he should be.
And a workhorse, I mean, he's high on everybody, or he should be high on everybody's list. Speaking of high on somebody's list, I actually kind of want to talk about the next guy myself, and that's Irv Smith. Irv Smith in that tight end room. Does anybody know who the tight end 2 is without looking? Because I had to look.
Tim Tebow.
No, but he might make this roster. He could probably make this roster.
I got nothing.
Ben Ellefson. He was waived by the Jaguars, and now he's the tight end 2 for the Vikings. So if we want to talk about opportunity shares, like I get that you've got a couple of stud wide receivers there in Minnesota. You even have a solid wide receiver 3 in Minnesota, but Irv Smith is slotted to get some serious playing time, and for his value late, also I think that I'm delaying very severely, and it looks like one of those Chinese movies where my lips are not matching what I'm saying, so it's pretty hilarious.
It's like
speeding. If you're not watching on YouTube, you're missing it out. But anyhow, so Irv Smith, we really want to see Irv Smith get back healthy and ready to go. Thumb injury, it says that he's expected to be ready to start the season, but who knows? I'm going to jump out for a minute. Who else has the doc pulled up right now?
I got it. I do. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, I'm going to go for Rich. Go for Rich.
You guys can keep talking about Irv Smith, or you can jump on to Tim Patrick. Oh, never mind. I'm back. Okay.
You good?
Anybody else want to talk about Irv?
Or Chinese lip reading, if not, Justin.
Yep. Cheers to the Chinese New Year, whenever that is.
I think Irv Smith is. Look, I was high on him finally this year and everything. I want to see big things from everything, but this is just another notch in his history as of right now, with just constant nagging injuries and everything. And it's a thumb injury, I get it and stuff like that. It's just, man, it's just one thing after another every year with him, and you want to get him in there and see how he does. It's just, are we ever going to get that chance?
Gentleman Joe, I love it.
I like it.
I'm going to ignore Mr. Casket lid. I know that's a sensitive subject with some of us.
Yeah, you can ignore it. Hey, Nino, we're going to get to this topic later on as well. Good call. I don't know if you're the one that put it in the notes, but we will get to it later.
Yeah, I'll say this about Irv Smith. Like, I really don't have he's not on my radar. He hasn't been. I know people, a lot of us are, I'm not saying people are really high on him, but definitely have, they have a tickler for the guy, and you're keeping their eye out on him. I kind of feel like it's more of just kind of like desperation out for the TE position, because it's always so bare, thin and bare. Me, myself, it's like, if he's there, like, if there's great value for him later on in later rounds, then okay. But I don't know. He's just something that he's really not someone who's on my radar personally.
Yeah, I didn't have high hopes for Irv Smith coming into the season. I think he's just a guy at tight end. I don't think he's anything special. When you're drafting a tight end that late, it's really a dart throw. And this news to me just cements, like, he missed most of last year with a knee injury. Now he's got a thumb. They expect him to be back to start the season, but is that thumb going to affect his ability to catch the ball? Is it going to affect his ability to block? We really don't know. So I had very little interest in Irv Smith to begin with, and this is just furthering that I have even less interest now in him.
How about you, Sean? Do you have any high hopes?
I mean, for me, it's really Irv Smith I probably wouldn't draft. So it's not particularly a secret that my guy is Cole Kmet. If we're looking in the middle of the late rounds. But for me, Irv Smith, I mean, there are other opportunities that you can go out there. I know a lot of people are higher on Evan Ingram, or, there's Mike Gesicki, people of those. So, I mean, realistically, when you get to that portion of tight end, you can smash them all together, and it's just pick your guy.
Yep.
I think Irv Smith, especially with the injury, is going to fall down the board. He might be somebody where, if there's enough passing game progression from the Vikings that we keep hearing about, that he might be a waiver wire priority in week 2 or 3, or whenever your tight end that you drafted gets one catch for 5 yards and you end up picking up a tight end. That's more likely when Irv Smith will be popular, not necessarily in draft season.
Coming from the waiver wire guy himself, by the way. The waiver
he's
wire
getting primed up, getting ready for it.
That's the waiver wire guru.
He's already trying to give you guys pointers on week 2 or 3 waiver wires, and we're not even in week 1 of the preseason because I don't count that Hall of Fame game. But all right, so I see a golden opportunity here because I've been picking up Irv Smith everywhere because of his value. He's so late, and now just like Sean just said, he's going to drop even more because of this injury. So I've been picking him up a lot, and also mostly because I love stacks, and I've been able to get Kirk Cousins for a lot cheaper than you would imagine. Having 2 top 12 wide receivers last year, the dude is still dropping like crazy, like he does every year. Like Kirk Cousins is highly disrespected just because he's a douche that nobody likes, which is cool. It's fine, whatever. But I'll get him for a really late value, and then also get Irv Smith and get that stack. So I see an opportunity for Irv Smith as a top 12 tight end in PPR next season or this coming season.
I'll take that board bet. Let's put that on the board. I don't think he will be.
Yep, and I'm saying top
right there.
12 to make it like I'm calling it because everybody else has him at like 20. So
I mean,
who wants a piece of that?
Right here. He's not making top 12.
Nope.
No. Can I add my? So I forgot about the rules and regulations for the board bet. I got called out on one time. Can I add my name right now? Is that when I can?
Yeah. No,
I can add it right now. Okay, so I can't go back like tomorrow and add my name. All right, put Joe down as a no. He's not going to be top 12.
Right.
He'll be top 1,200, but not top 12.
He only needs 1 catch to get top 1,200.
Yeah,
so
you're probably right about that.
There is something to be said, and I'm a little bit out on tight ends unless it's tight end premium. There is something to be said from when you get past the first 8 tight ends, it's really irrelevant. To a certain extent, it's matchup specific, and it's a lot of waiver wire tight ends, and you're swapping people in and out. So, I mean, when people say top 12, tight end is the one position where that might not necessarily matter, where you have your 6 to 8 to 9 tight ends in any one given year, and 3 or 4 of those are touchdown dependent. Your Robert Tunyons, your Dawson Knox, people like that. So when you're talking about tight ends that get actual volume, you're talking about 6 or 7. So, I mean, realistically, top 12, top 15. More than likely, a lot of those people aren't going to draft Irv Smith, even if he becomes a top 12 tight end, which I think if he plays the entire season is entirely possible.
Yeah, I think he'll have on his touchdown weeks, he'll be a top 3 tight end on his touchdown weeks. But that's how all those, like you said, that's how all those tight ends are.
It's not crazy. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, he is playing a really talented offense. And it's not like they're amazing wide receivers and Dalvin Cook. It's not just going to be those 3 players. The ball has to get distributed elsewhere as well. So he's legitimate. He can be a legitimate option. It's not a bad bet. The board bet's not a bad bet, Justin. It's not bad at all. It's a personal thing with like certain guys I just don't trust. But I think the potential is there for him to be top 12 quarterback. I agree with you on that.
Right on.
We've spent way too much time.
Yeah, that's what I was
so. Hey,
wait. Say the same thing.
So anyway, about Irv Smith. Go ahead.
Hell of a guy. No, all right. Tim Patrick with the leg injury. It says serious with a question mark. Does anybody have an update on that? Because I've not seen that, and it looks like we put this in the notes early on.
Yeah, this one in the notes when it first happened. It's a torn ACL. He's done for the year.
Okay. Is he still in the Broncos?
Yes.
Yeah, well,
man, that wide receiver core, holy cow, man!
Yeah, he's in their
medical. All they do is get injured. The Broncos wide receiver core.
So what does this do for the wide receiver room for Russell Wilson?
Constellation of targets for Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, and condenses targets. People will talk about KJ Hamler, but I don't think when he plays out
Dulcich, my boy Dulcich. Tight end. Speaking of tight ends, he's a rookie though.
Alberto, I'm not trusting.
I hear you. I like the guy, man. I'd say by second half of the season.
Long term, Joe. I absolutely agree. Yeah. Long term, Dulcich is going to be a fine tight end for the Broncos, but for fantasy and this year, I'm not relying on Dulcich at all. I'd prefer Alberto, but I still think like Russell Wilson historically, and I understand he's had trash tight ends outside of the 1 year with Jimmy Graham, but he really hasn't targeted his tight ends much at all. Up in Seattle, even though that was probably by design because they wanted to run the ball 1,000 times. But
I'm pretty sure Sean was playing tight end for them at the time.
I mean,
with the history of injuries for this wide receiving core, he may only be throwing the tight ends. by like fifth week of the season.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
Hey, back to Tim Tebow. He has a history with the Broncos.
I'm rooting for Tebow.
All right. Well, that makes one of us. All right. So we have. I don't even know who this tight end is. Did any of you put this Grant Calcaterra?
This was Nino, and nobody cares.
Okay. All right.
I'll back Nino up. I'm intrigued by Calcaterra. I'll just put it that way. But
Okay.
that's
all right.
Is it
Well,
the Eagles?
what's that?
Is he the Eagles or the Saints?
the Eagles or is he in Houston? I think the Eagles are Nino's number 2 team. I know he's a Patriots fan, but he's always talking about Eagles players.
He's real high on Jalen Hurts, which I can't blame him. I like Jalen Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
You also like Tua, but the Rams wide receiver, Van Jefferson, this one's actually we're talking about. So we've got he's having knee surgery and could potentially miss week 1. The question in the comments here was, does this open the door for an OBJ signing? And I don't see that at all, because OBJ's injury was like in the Super Bowl. Like he's not able to come back by week 1 himself, I'm sure. But Ben Skoranek and Tutu Atwell, like, I mean, are they even worth it, or are we just putting more stock into Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp?
Oh yeah.
For me,
Captain
it's
Robinson show.
I wouldn't try to guess which one of them. I know Skoranek is a favorite of the coaches, and he might end up playing the sort of offensive role that Robert Woods did, where he does a little bit of everything, but it won't compute to the same offensive output that Woods did. So it's more likely it's going to be Robinson and Kupp, and Jefferson will come back in week 3 or 4. Jefferson's role is entirely the Deshaun Jackson-ish role of just run deep and hope you catch the ball. So I don't even think Van Jefferson, outside of 3 wide receiver and a couple of flex leagues, is particularly viable. He's sort of that boomer bust guy, but no, I wouldn't go with Skoranek or Atwell.
Rich, do we think this Van Jefferson injury even really affects the ADP or where you would draft Kupp or Robinson at all?
No.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they should both be. And for me, from my book, those players should both be pretty darn high anyway.
Mhm.
Obviously, Kupp, obviously. But Van Jefferson, excuse me, I'm tired. Van Jefferson, yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of mock drafts from the 12 spot. And speaking of which, tomorrow night, check out my man down here, George, with his buddy Jason. They are going to be doing a what did we end up calling that show?
It's the Mock Draft Lavatory with a V, L-A-V, Lavatory.
Yeah. Tell them a little bit more about it.
So it's basically what we're doing is we're going to be running 3 consecutive mock drafts at the same time on Sleeper. And what we'll do is we'll have members of the Toilets and Titles team will be in the draft with you. So you get to draft with us at Toilets and Titles. And while you're drafting, Jason and I, and maybe a guest or 2, who knows, you got to tune in to find out, we'll be doing a live breakdown of all the drafts as they actually happen as a show.
That's a great idea.
You can, while you're doing the draft, if you're skilled enough, or if you have multiple phones or a tablet or another computer, you can pull up and actually ask questions to Jason and I live on the show while we're breaking down your draft, and we'll answer every single question live on the show. If you want us to break down your team at the end of the draft, we'll absolutely break down your team. We give our opinions on which drafts we like, which drafts we didn't. It's a 100% interactive show. So that's every Monday night except for next Monday, because Jason and I will be traveling back from Canton. So we did it last week. We'll do it again this week. We're going to skip a Monday, and then we'll be right back at it. And we're going to do that every Monday leading right up to the start of the season.
Yeah, it was so fun. And like I was saying, though, I'm from the 12 spot in my home league, so I've been mocking a lot in the 12 spot. And with Allen Robinson, I've been pretty consistently getting him on that 3-4 turn. And when I pass him up, every once in a while, I even still get him on the 5-6 turn, which is mind-blowing to me. So definitely a guy that I'm targeting for sure.
So I was talking with Jake Ellenbogen. And if you're not familiar with him, he's from he's the CEO of Downtown Rams, and he also does the Rams Edge. He's been on SiriusXM, Sports Grid TV, NFL Game Day, done all the Yep, done toilets titles. I did a show with him on Thursday, so you can go back, check it out. And we specifically talked about Van Jefferson, his injury, and OBJ. There's definitely mutual interest in OBJ and OBJ coming back to the Rams. The problem is the injury. So they're not expecting his injury and him to be able to come back till September, October-ish, maybe even November. So he's still a ways away. So that's why he hasn't really signed with anyone. But he's narrowed it down to 2 teams that OBJ would be willing to go to. The Rams, because he wants to come back, obviously a chance to win another Super Bowl. And the other team, believe it or not, is the Bills. And the reason why it's the Bills is because he's very, very good friends with Von Miller. And Von Miller has been petitioning him and calling him and asking him to come sign with them in Buffalo. And OBJ, he's played in New York, so playing in Buffalo is nothing new to him. He's played in crappy weather in Cleveland. So it's probably going to come down to those 2 teams. The money for both teams paying him is not nearly going to be an issue. They're not expecting either team to sign him to a whole lot. It's going to be more of all right, we'll sign you. You got to prove it deal because he's coming off this second ACL. But those are basically the 2 teams I've narrowed it down to. And he thinks, he said that Tutu Atwell will be the replacement for Van Jefferson, even though it's not a 1-for-1 replacement because they're 2 different players. They have 2 different play styles. But that's the guy that he expects to see the bump. But he also said he expects Allen Robinson to lead the NFL in receiving yards this year, which I found to be a very spicy take. I don't believe that at all, but he believes it because he thinks Cooper Kupp's going to get all this attention, and Allen Robinson is finally playing with one of the most competent quarterbacks he's ever played with. So,
by far the most competent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the quarterbacks. It's been atrocious.
Yeah, I think OBJ should just wind up going. I think it's him. With the Rams is just so perfect, and just sign him in October. Or he should sign with the Rams in October for whatever they can afford and just make it work out. It's so perfect for him. It really is.
Yeah, but who's paying for his rehab right now?
The Rams are.
Are they still on the hook for it?
Yep, yeah, because he injured himself playing for them, so they're still taking care of it.
Yeah, and if you sit there and think about it, by the time he's coming back and everything, Rams makes the most sense. He already knows their offense and everything, and him having to come into another team, learn their offense, get chemistry with who he's playing around and stuff. He already has all that with the Rams. That makes the most sense than anything. I just don't see teams going after him because they want to see if he's back and everything. And on top of that, he got to learn the system all over again. So.
Yeah, and by the time you guys get to September, and when I say you guys, I mean the Rams because obviously they're watching right now. By the time you guys get to September and you guys have another wide receiver injury, you're going to need the guy September, October, November, whenever it is. You're in the playoff hunt. You got a really good shot at making the playoffs. You want that depth at a very important position for your offense. I mean, it totally makes sense. I don't understand why you wouldn't just seal the deal now if you're already paying for the injury, which I was joking about that because it's the NFL and they can pay for the damn injury anyway. But that is interesting to me. I never realized that was a thing. But we'll move on to Christian Watson. Christian Watson was slotted to potentially get a lot of playing time for Green Bay, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think this injury, if he really does miss any kind of significant time, could potentially make Randall Cobb relevant again in that offense, in that wide receiving room. I mean, obviously Cobb is not the same Cobb, but when it comes to fantasy football anyway, opportunity is key. And you've got one of the most prolific quarterbacks in the league that loves to sling it to a guy that he knows and trusts. And the number 2 wide receiver right now is also, newsflash, he's going to be hurt by week 2. That's Sami Watkins. So that just leaves Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, really. I mean, we didn't get to see too much out of Amari Rodgers last season, and we don't know much about Romeo Doubs. I mean, as far as the NFL goes. So I think this is a pretty important injury and could be potentially a pretty big hit to the Packers if Watson's out for a while.
Yeah.
So Aaron Rodgers actually had nice words to say about this. When he was asked about it, he said it's not a big concern. He's a really smart kid. It'd be nice to get him off the pup so he could do some of the walkthrough stuff, but he'll be fine. He's super athletic. He went through the entire offseason program with us, the OTAs, minicamp. He's been in my hip pocket asking questions after periods and during individual time. So I'm not worried about it, but it would be nice to get him back. So surprisingly, Aaron Rodgers actually had nice words to say about a teammate, which doesn't really happen for a rookie teammate. I think this being injured for fantasy purpose, the way I look at it is actually a good thing because it's going to cause his draft stock to fall a little bit, and which means I'll be getting him more at a reasonable price. I expect by the end of the year, I expect Christian Watson to be the true number one wide receiver there, not Allen Lazard.
That's George for you, always looking for a good deal. Hey, so Sean, before I ask your opinion of Christian Watson, do you want to talk about the special episode that you did earlier today and who you had on, what it was about?
So we had Dennis Michelson on, myself and Joe. Dennis Michelson is DMIC Media, who is one half of Sci Fantasy Football, which is scienceoffantasyfootball.com. There's two guys, Professor and the DMIC Media, Dennis. And Dennis was talking about all of his various, so he has a very interesting way, and you can check out the episode to find out, he has a very interesting way of breaking down players. So there's a lot of talk about projections and how you get there and all of the various things and the sway of projections and range of outcomes and stuff like that. He actually breaks it down entirely differently. And for someone who's played fantasy football for 20 years and been over 1,000 leagues, it was one of those things where you sort of like, well, that makes a whole lot of sense. Why didn't I do it that way? I mean, and it was it's an hour and 45 minutes of just three guys talking about fantasy football in all various manners, and we asked him questions about all sorts of things, and it was really interesting for me, just from the perspective of he was a guy that I figured if we interviewed him, I'd learn quite a bit from him, and we did.
And who was your third guy?
He definitely gives you another prism to look at things through. It was an interesting interview.
Yeah, and if you ever listen or watch Joe's college shows, you know it's going to be an interesting interview as well. So great job, guys. We really appreciate the work that you guys are putting in, all of you really, but all you new guys have really helped carry us here recently. So you have no idea how much we appreciate your efforts at Toilets and Titles. I'm going to kind of skip over these last two unless you guys want to talk about it. We got N'Keal Harry with the Bears, and I'm guessing this Vince Beagle guy is like some linebacker because I don't know the name, and I'm a redraft offensive guy. So does anybody want to talk about them before we move on?
Go ahead, George.
I was saying N'Keal Harry was irrelevant, and we're really, unless you're Jared or Nino, like we're not diving deep into IDP. So I don't know what you want from me on these guys.
I was never drafting N'Keal Harry. It was never going to happen. Even like round 16, it was never going to happen.
I took him with my final pick in the Scott Fish Bowl because why not, right? Like that type of, I mean, it was the Scott
Chamber Miles Gaskins.
He was drafted, but for that league, he'll be the first person I cut. Let's just put it that way.
Short leash, Harry.
Oh, I'm already ready to cut. I've already got a waiver claim in with him being cut.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the next thing here. We're out of the injuries. We're done with the injuries. We're gonna move on to the next topic here, and that's Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones could potentially be on the bubble. He could be on the outs. He's been kind of the RB4 in that offense through camp, and I'm not even so sure that that's even solid or sold. And a lot of times, even if a team does hold a fourth running back, they're on the the practice squad. So, like I said, who knows? Rojo could be out. I was never going to draft him. I've never been a Rojo guy, even when he had high hopes early on. I've never been a Rojo guy, and I think Leonard Fournette being extremely relevant last season kind of showed just how irrelevant Rojo was.
Yeah, I've never liked Rojo. I've always warned people to stay away from him. There have been times where Fournette's down, for like a week or two, and you're thinking, all right, opportunity, I'll give Rojo a shot, and I always feel like I've just gotten burned, nothing in return. I can't stand him. Not as a human being. I'm sure he's a fine human being. I can't stand him as a player. I don't touch him. He's radioactive to Joe. Joe knows.
He's being run off this team by a 7th-round rookie by the name of Isaiah Pacheco. That's all you really need to know. Like, Pacheco, the beat writers have been reporting is actually getting runs with the ones today. They're really high on this kid. Check your dynasty leagues. If he's for some reason is on waivers, find a way to add him. Because I don't believe they're very high on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Jerick McKinnon has always been just the guy. But as far as Ronald Jones go, like I've been saying it for weeks now. This guy is on the roster bubble. He's probably not making this team. And Isaiah Pacheco is the reason why. I believe they're going to go into the season with 4. I believe they're going to carry 4 running backs. I believe they'll carry Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I believe as the starter. I believe they're going to carry Jerick McKinnon. They're going to carry Pacheco. And then it comes down to Derek Gore and Ronald Jones. And I think they're going to take Gore over Jones. Gore looked fantastic last year when given the opportunity. The only reason they signed Ronald Jones is because at the time Clyde Edwards-Helaire was injured. He was suffering a knee injury or an ankle injury or something like that. He had something going on with him. So they brought him in as in case of emergency, break this glass. And he just has not been what people want him to be. He's not a good running back. He's not going to make this team. And if you're drafting Ronald Jones or if you still have him in a dynasty league, get what you can from him. Get out from underneath him because he's not going to be a good running back at all.
Sell.
That actually took care of our last topic on the list too. So I scrolled down to the bottom and popped that banner up. But also, just to follow up with your in case of emergency break glass, KC, if you're listening, in case of emergency, buy a new fire extinguisher. It's not worth it. Let's see. The sky is the limit is my next topic here. So we're going to talk about Sky Moore. Sky Moore's getting a lot of positive buzz in Kansas City. So, I mean, we're going to keep it in Kansas City. And, I mean, is there any chance that he's the wide receiver one or a wide receiver one by the end of the season?
Maybe the team's 3rd wide receiver. So I expect Juju to be the wide receiver 1. You can say what you want about him. I expect Mecole Hardman to be the wide receiver 2. And by the end of the season, Sky Moore to be at least 3. I think he'll jump over Valdez-Scantling. I can't see Sky Moore bumping Juju and Mecole Hardman at this point. Next year, absolutely. I could see him being the at least the wide receiver 2. But I can't see him being the wide receiver 1 right now over Hardman and Juju.
He could have games where he's better, just because, like,
absolutely.
Because I'm not that confident in Juju as number 1, but yeah, I
he's
agree
a great best ball player,
deep flyer. Yep, for sure.
I think the story that people might not, and this is a lot of just conjecture and arguments that people are having, is who in the Chiefs' offense, other than Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, are we actually confident about? Now, a lot of people say Juju.
Yep.
But beyond that, it's probably going to be a best ball sort of mania thing where there's going to be a different wide receiver every week who gets the majority of the targets that Juju doesn't get. Now, the other question is, does Juju play outside or does Juju play in the slot?
The Chiefs have him listed right now as their slot wide receiver.
So if Juju plays in the slot, it's going to be close to his 2020 numbers where he's averaging 9 yards of reception and getting 130 targets. If that's the case, Sky Moore's got a place to stand out because he will be the outside receiver.
I still think that's contingent on who the defense, like how the defense decides to play him. I don't think it had more to do with him playing in the slot in 2020 personally. I think it had more to do with having the better wide receiver on the outside to help cut down. You know what I mean? Like I felt like Antonio was taking more of that work, that defense on more. Like I think that had more to do with his numbers than him playing in the slot.
Well, his 2018 season, yes, but Brown left in 2019. So 2020 was the first year where we saw Big Ben's arm fall off.
Yep.
And Juju essentially became the safety valve that Deante Johnson eventually was. And
Fair.
the fact that they would run the little, because I mean his ADOT was like 5. I mean to put it in other terms, his ADOT in 2018. Now, granted, ADOT is not always the most precise of stats, but it was close to 10. So you saw where his production was going to reach that sort of top 12 level, and which is why the conversation between a lot of us is Juju top 12. I think it's in how they use him, and my answer would be no.
I got you. No, I agree with that. I didn't know you were talking about 2018 or 2020. Right on. Very good. Very good. All right. Let's see. What's next? What we got on the list? Isaiah Spiller is getting a lot of first-team reps. Him and Austin Eckler are the only two in Chargers camp right now that are getting first-team reps. So I think that kind of makes him the de facto number 2. I think this is huge for fantasy football purposes because we know Eckler is prone to that occasional injury, and he does fight through pain and he does play through pain. But if you've got a competent backup that can handle a workload, maybe they lean a little bit more towards playing it safe for him and save him more for the playoff push. I mean, personally, I think they got a real shot at a playoff push. So Isaiah Spiller could be a thing this year.
Yeah, I think so. He was my favorite running back out of this draft, actually. I like him a lot, and I think he's in a perfect spot where he's on an excellent offense with with an elite quarterback, and he's got an excellent running back ahead of him. But a guy who's also, I love Eckler, but he's got a history of injuries, and like most running backs, like most heavily used running backs, to be fair. But I think it's a great spot for Spiller that Eckler probably will miss a 3-game stretch sometime this season, and I think Spiller is fully capable of going in there, and you're not going to lose anything. You're going to get a lot of confidence out of the guy. You're not going to be disappointed. He's going to be a great handcuff. I really believe that.
Not to mention that he's on this team, Chargers. They're going to be high-powered, high-scoring, and not to mention in the division where every game is going to be the over a 50+. So plenty of opportunity.
Yep, fair. So the next thing we're going to talk about is so big that it has a sponsor. Patreon.com/Toilets Titles. Got to drop that in there again. We've got 5 different tiers, guys. We've got the beginning tier that gets you into our Discord chat, which with the chat, actually, we've been chatting more and more here frequently, or more recently, and I like it. I love it. So I want some more of it. So we're going to continue to push that, even that smallest level. There's different levels, but at a certain point, you actually get exclusive waiver wire episodes every Monday by Sean, which we mentioned earlier. And he's going to have a different co-host from Toilets Titles team every week that's going to help him out. So we're all really looking forward to the waiver wire show. So get on to the patreon.com/Toilets Title and try to come after us in the Frankenstank Listener League next season by joining the Patreon.
Come get some.
That's right. Rich actually, he's pretty good at it. Joe actually did really good too. So I'm not so much.
I just want to say too, Justin, surprise, Sean and I announced a new Patreon level on the show today. You probably didn't know it, but
so there's a 6th level.
Oh yeah,
it's the $1 million level. It's the $1 million level. If you donate $1 million, you get a free steak dinner with me. I mean, it's on you anyway because you're donating $1 million. You're paying us $1 million.
For $1 million, you're now the new CEO of Toilets and Titles.
Well, you can surf and turf. I'm taking you to Red Lobster. If you donate $1 million, I'm taking you to Red Lobster.
Joe, don't forget about the football game. Listen, you enticed me with that football game. I'm counting pennies as we speak.
Yeah, and I'll take you to the Giants football game too.
Yeah, $1 million buys you the CEO seat for Toilets and Titles, just so you know. But this topic that was so big that it gets a sponsor is well, George, I'll let you look at the screen and let you talk about this topic. What's going on down there in Miami?
Well, Justin, if you were paying attention, you would realize I did a bathroom break on this very subject. So you can get my opinion on this very, very subject just by checking out the bathroom breaks.
Okay.
Listen,
well, two things. For one, yeah, you totally busted my ass, and I need to go back and watch it. I apologize. But also, we might have viewers right now that are watching that did not see that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. But also, let's
go back and check out the bathroom.
More for them, not for me.
but no. So listen, I'm mad that we got docked the first round pick. I'm mad in 2023, even though we had 2 of them. So we still have a first round pick in that draft. We've got the 49ers.
Yeah.
And we just lost a round. So hopefully, if Miami does what I think they can do, I think they'll make the playoffs. So it'll be a late first round, which would be fine. It sucks to lose it because you're still getting, starter quality level that late in the draft. But it doesn't hurt because I don't project it to be like a top 10 pick or a top 15 pick. And then we lose a 2023, I think it's either a third or a fourth. Third, okay. And we actually have multiple third-round picks in next year's draft as well. So because we have the Patriots third-round pick next year as well. So we lose these draft picks, which ultimately will hurt our flexibility because if Tua's not the guy, we were going to use those 2 first-round draft picks probably to trade for another quarterback. Listen, it sucks that we got caught. And the reason I say that it sucks that we got caught is because I believe every team tampers with players. So this is not something that is just strictly isolated to Miami, even though this is the second time we've been caught tampering. Because we got caught tampering with Coach Don Shula. We lost draft picks for that. And, well, you see how that worked out. We actually got Don Shula, who's probably the second greatest coach in NFL history. So I don't mind tampering as long as it works out. I'm not mad at Stephen Ross. The dude wants to win, and he's willing to do anything to win. And if he's willing to tamper to bring in Sean Payton and Tom Brady to add to this team, I think they would be probably one of the top 3 teams as Super Bowl favorites if you added Sean Payton and Tom Brady to this roster that is currently constructed. So I don't mind it. It just sucks that Brian Flores had to go out and rat on the team because it would never have been known and we would never have lost those picks if Brian Flores wasn't a rat and went out and ratted on us. So it is what it is. I'm mad we lost the picks, but I'm not mad at the process because every team tampers and we just got caught. That's all it is. We just got caught. Every team does it. It's not that big of a deal. If you think your team's not tampering, you're foolish because they are.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing's a bit of a clown show, though.
Yeah.
So this seemed to me, and I could be wrong because I'm not a lawyer or work for the NFL or any of that, the entire punishment was meant to also punish him for the thing that they can't admit that he might have told Brian Flores to do.
Well,
they admitted that he said it, but they said he was joking, and Flores didn't actually try to do it. So the whole thing is the NFL, they're trying to save their image but they're also going to punish the Dolphins. This isn't the Patriots where everyone knew for years they had been cheating. They had been caught multiple times. This, to me, they got fined. They got penalized way too much. And it seems to me like this penalty was the combination of the two. They just couldn't say it was because they don't want to infect the integrity of the game.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, and if you guys watch the show, you guys know integrity was the big word right there that you use. I'm really big about integrity, and Rich and George, and I'm sorry, Sean or Joe, if you guys served in the military and I just missed it, but I know that Rich and George have. Sean, you have.
Sean was in Marines.
Sean's also Marine, so you got 3.
4 of us. 4 of us were in the military, and we all know how big integrity is. You know what I mean? It's so important for not only just for the job, but just to be able to wear the uniform. So I'm really big on integrity, but when it comes to a bunch of grown men playing a game, trying to win a game, nobody got hurt in this one. So this one doesn't hurt me or affect me in that way. But I mean, did cheat, you got caught, whatever, it is what it is. But that's also from a non-Dolphins fan looking in. But what I'm saying is I don't look down on the Dolphins for trying to do whatever it takes to win the game. So, but speaking of which, I can't believe that I buried the lead. I looked right over it in the show notes at the very beginning. The very first topic that we had down to talk about was that there is maybe potential that Roger Goodell might have a spine. Maybe he's trying to push for more than 6 games here. So what do we think the odds are that that we actually get more than just a slap on the wrist 6-game suspension for the monster that is Deshaun Watson?
I think as soon as they appealed the suspension, they knew what was coming. they get the ability to set the person in place who then sets the appeal. Like they have some number in mind. It may end up being a settlement between Watson and the NFL where Watson says, okay, I'll take 12 games and a $4 million fine, or he takes less games to take the fine. It seems to be more about the money than anything else. Like obviously they want to protect their image and they want to suspend him for some more games. But there seems to, from all the reports that I've read, there seems to be something stuck in the NFL's craw about the fact that the contract was specifically structured in a way in which he would be suspended this year and only lose a certain amount of money. So I think the NFL wants a fine on top of whatever suspension they have. So I think it'll end up being a settlement of like 12 games and a $5 million fine or something like that.
Yeah, because the way it's currently constructed right now, the 6 games, he's only going to lose like $300,000, which is absolutely freaking ridiculous. Not just the NFL, but other teams were extremely pissed. Sorry, there's the first one, Justin. We get 2. There's the first one.
This is okay, and I've said a couple today that were like borderline.
The other team owners were absolutely pissed at the way that the Cleveland Browns went ahead and structured this contract. If you're not familiar, they structured it to where this 1 year, the first year, Deshaun Watson's only making $1 million. $1 million out of a $230 million guaranteed dollar contract. Like that is absolutely ridiculous. They appealed it. I follow a bunch of legal briefs and legal guys on Twitter. They're talking that if the NFL comes down with a year suspension, indefinite. So they're saying if they suspend him, it's going to be indefinitely, and no more, at least minimum of 1 year. And if that happens, they're saying Deshaun Watson might try to file an injunction at the federal level, thus blocking them from being able to suspend him and him being able to play this year until it goes through all this arbitration at the federal level. So it's a very interesting case to watch. I am by no means an attorney, but find one on Twitter and follow them if you want more legal updates, because this is getting really, really interesting for both Deshaun Watson and the NFL. And it makes no sense. Like, if they're going to suspend him for a year, it would make more sense to be suspended for this year and file for reinstatement next year where he's getting all of his money. Because if this goes into next year, he's going to lose like $30 million next year. If he's allowed to play this year where he makes 1 and then gets suspended next year, it's going to cost him a lot more financially. So that to me doesn't make sense. But I mean, it's not me. It's not my money. It's not my career. I'm not the one fighting this. I'm not the one using Instagram for masseuses. So I don't know. What do you want?
And I'm not saying that this makes it all okay or
absolutely
is an equalizer or anything, but I will say that according to lawsuitinformationcenter.com, which could be a very reputable website, but it also could be something that my cousin Billy created. It's 1.5 to 2.5 million each is what they're estimating Deshaun Watson is settling to each plaintiff, for a total of somewhere between $33 to $55 million that he's paying out to the victims in total. I believe that whatever that total is should also be what the NFL fine is to match, and then they should also give that money to the victims because they supported him through that trial. And then maybe not the NFL, maybe I think the Texans, because the Texans actually kind of helped support him through that issue. I think they obviously knew about a lot of the trouble and didn't exactly do anything to help stop. So I think the Texans should have to match that settlement and give that to the victims as well, personally. But that's just me personally. I'm pretty passionate about that. We talked a lot about Deshaun Watson. Yes, Joe.
I was just going to say, just from a fan perspective, I can't. If I were a Cleveland Browns fan right now, and I'm not knocking Cleveland Browns fans at all. I'm just saying, if I were though, my stomach would be in absolute knots. Like every which way it's Tuesday. In terms of them actually, trading for the guy, and now just this stuff, like the uncertainty of it all, but man, just what a sick mess. What a sick mess.
I mean, I'm already I agree with you. They made. For sure, and like I've even talked about how much like it was going to hurt me to even try to continue to be an NFL fan and to support and do this show, which indirectly kind of still supports the NFL, like over just a silly little 6-game suspension. But if I were a Browns fan, absolutely, bare minimum, I'm jumping ship and I'm going over to become a Colts fan.
Yep.
So for the
Can I just say real quick, I'm really glad Miami did not trade for this guy, because I honestly, I don't know if I could remain a Miami fan. Like,
Yeah.
I'm good with us, trying to cheat and tamper with players. That's fine. I'm okay. And listen, we have Tyreek Hill on our team, right? Like, so I'm not saying like Miami is this virtuous team that doesn't do anything wrong, but you know what we don't have? We don't have a sexual predator on our team, and I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
so
Listen, there are the fan bases of many quarterback needy teams who wanted to trade for this guy. I'm a Giants fan. There are plenty of Giants fans that were like, let's trade, this year's 2 first-round picks and a first-round pick next year, for Deshaun Watson. I'm like, are you out of your minds?
Well,
You're out of your minds. And not just that, we got Danny Dimes. So what are you talking?
Yeah, we'll talk about him in a minute.
I
Go
saw
ahead,
that.
Sean.
So the football related things as far as this is concerned is it does seem like regardless of what happens, he's going to be suspended for the first 6 games. That he accepted that suspension regardless of what else happens, that he is suspended. So if he files an injunction, which most people know that Tom Brady filed an injunction against the league, and that's how he was able to play through most of the nonsense that he went through and then eventually take his suspension, it does seem like Watson is going to be suspended for the very least the first 6 games. Most of us understand that it's going to be longer, and everything that I've read says that an injunction is unlikely to even work because of the fact that the collective bargaining agreement is specifically set out for things like this. Like that essentially the legal precedent is you sign the agreement, the NFLPA signed the agreement. It may not necessarily seem to you like it's fair, but I mean, you guys bargained for more of a percentage of the overall revenue or whatever you guys got out of it. And this is unfortunately the circumstance that you never thought you would be in when you signed the agreement that you're now in, and you have to take the punishment.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Very, very well said, Sean. Very well said. All right. So next up, we're going to move on from that because we've talked a lot about Deshaun Watson. This is a West Coast, and I think the closest to the West Coast we have is Rich in the house. So I want to talk about this 49ers backfield right now because the notes that we put in the show notes about the 49ers backfield is that like Elijah Mitchell had off-season knee surgery. Like that's, I mean, I'm sure maybe a lot of people knew about that, but that was kind of news to me this week. And Sermon is listed as the RB2 currently. You got Jordan Mason, that's also been kind of creating some serious buzz in camp. What's that? I mean, here we are, not even quite week 1 of the preseason, and we already have no idea what they're going to do with that backfield in San Francisco. Who are like? Are you even trying to target anybody, Rich, out of that San Francisco backfield? And if so, who?
So it's the same theory I was talking about, Naji Harris. When you got your starting running back injured, it gives opportunity for people in camp to show what they're doing. Trey Sermon needed this camp to show what he could do based off of last year and everything, getting stuck in the doghouse and everything. Hey, great. He's showing that he's had the potential now. Look, this just goes down to another year where you got tons of 49er running backs and stuff like that are going to be sharing the field and everything. Mitchell is already proven that what he can do and everything. He's going to be given the opportunity, but you're just going to have another running back committee situation that we've already been in with this whole 49ers episode for the last 3-4 years.
Exactly. From a fantasy standpoint, that's where this system bites you in the ass, right? Like Trey Sermon now gets to show that what he's worth, which is great for the team, but it's kind of frustrating for us guys that are trying to filter it out. So, yeah, Joe.
Same thing with the Ravens, who are going to be covering in a little while. And those are the 2 teams that are, 2 of the top 5 teams that rely so heavily on the running game. And they really are you usually can plug and play. That's serious. Like you really can, they're RB2, they're RB3. Your first 2 guys are down, your RB3 can go in, and you're pretty safe in playing those guys, getting them off waiver, and you feel like, woo, I hit gold. But there really is so much uncertainty with the 49ers and the Ravens.
All right, so after Elijah Mitchell, it sounds like maybe we're looking at Trey Sermon.
Yes.
You
don't think so?
You still don't think so?
I am. I think so.
I would take Jeff Wilson Jr. 100 times out of 100 times over Trey Sermon. Go back into the files, look it up. I did a show with Eric Crocker, who does the Locked On 49ers, and he talked about how Jeff Wilson is for sure going to be the number 2 running back on this team. This week in practice alone, he looked like the best running back on the team. He knows this system. He's been there a while. He was ahead of Trey Sermon last year. He's listed, according to ESPN, he's listed on the depth chart as the number 2, ahead of TPD and Trey Sermon. They got actually Trey Sermon and listed as the number 4 running back on ESPN.com right now for the 49ers depth chart. You're going to see Elijah Mitchell be the one with Jeff Wilson Jr. coming in as his backup. TPD will have somewhat of a role, but not a whole lot. And I think Trey Sermon is nothing more than depth fodder.
Okay, you changed my mind.
Well, I mean, also that interview with Crocker was before the camp started, right?
No, this was a week and a half ago. So they were still in shorts and t-shirts and whatnot, but camp had definitely started.
Oh, okay.
And I joined one of his spaces. He was hosting Friday night, I believe he did one, where he was actually at 49ers camp, and all he did was rave about how good Jeff Wilson looked.
Nice. So I'm trying to pull something up here while we're talking before I move on to the next thing. But yeah, okay. Because you mentioned something about ESPN had Trey Sermon listed as the number 4, but ESPN sucks. So I like to look at our lads or player profiler, and they agree. He's the number 4, so I'll agree with you. So same situation, just like Joe said a minute ago. Same situation with the Ravens. We got the Hoblin Dobbins over the busted Gus bus right now in camp, and I think it's a lot of the same issues that we're seeing with the running back by committees, and it's just one of those teams where you have to take a piece at some point during the draft. Yeah, I'm trying to catch up again. At some point during the draft, that you're going to have to take one of these pieces, and you hope that you have the right piece. But really, ultimately, what you want to do in this situation, in my opinion, is always still try to get who you think is going to be the best guy by the end of the season. If you're going to try to get into that playoff push, you got to trust yourself enough to at least get into the playoffs. And then once you get into the playoffs, you want the best guy. I think it's pretty obvious for me anyway that's going to be J.K. Dobbins. So that's the guy that I'm going to target in the draft. So I don't really care what the ADP says at that time personally.
For me, it's the fact that where he is going in ADP right now, a lot of drafts that we've been in, especially with what I've seen the past couple weeks, is he's going in the 4th or 5th round. And I just think I'm looking at somebody else in the 4th and 5th round based off how I've been drafting everything, that I'm going to take a chance of having either one of these 2 running backs. I mean, Gus Edwards, I can't even be honest where I'm seeing him being drafted at. Has anybody noticed where he's being drafted at?
Much later, like 7, 8.
Yeah.
Much later.
I'm avoiding this backfield in all honesty and everything. You have plenty of options on other teams that where they're going, especially with Dobbins in the 4th round. I'm taking Jacobs in that situation.
What if you're a stubborn fantasy player that took Dobbins in the 2nd round last year and he got hurt, and now you just can't give up on him, and you really want to try to prove yourself right?
That usually works out and stuff like that. I think we've had this conversation last year. Is I'll draft him one time and hope that it works out. I'll draft him one more time after that injury. Then after that, it's that once bitten, or what is it? Fool me once. Yeah.
You have said that. You're consistent. You're nothing if not consistent. Sean, were you going to say something about this situation?
For me, I mean, it does seem, we've talked about this on roundtables before. It does seem like there's some smoke as to whether or not Dobbins is going to play week 1. Edwards probably will not. But for me, I'm avoiding both of them. So when you talk about Elijah Mitchell and then you talk about J.K. Dobbins, their ADP, I think one is 23 and one is 25 or 24 and 26. They're separated by 2. The guy that's drafted directly behind Elijah Mitchell, I would draft over both of them, and that's A.J. Dillon. Just because I believe Dillon we talked about this today on the podcast with Mr. Michelson, Dylan has a higher passing game role than most people look into. But for me, I've drafted Tyler Beatty in the last or second to last round in several drafts that I've done, especially recently. I did it in the Scott Fish Bowl. I did it in the EFFC. For me, he's probably the guy. It won't be much. He'll probably play for a week or 2 or 3. But if you're trying to stay ahead of the waiver wire and Dobbins eventually ends up not playing week 1, Beatty will be high up there. The honest answer of which running back I take from the Ravens is Lamar Jackson. But if you have me take an actual running back, it's Tyler Beatty.
Yeah, I think Beatty was a sneaky pick by the Ravens in the Sears draft. I liked it. I think it was like 6th round pick. I like what they're gonna. I'm curious to see, what they have dialed up for Beatty. I think he could wind up being interesting. They love their running backs incorporated into all aspects of the game.
Yeah, and since you brought it up, for what it's worth, I think that Lamar has a huge bounce back season this year with a healthy running back stable and a healthy defensive back stable on the defensive side. Like everybody underestimates what that means for a mobile quarterback to be able to have a defense that can get you good field position and get you back out on the field and give you time of possession and that sort of stuff. Like it's crucial. So
and Rashad Bateman too.
Yeah, Bateman, he stepped up. Yep, he has stepped up. We talked about him last week. Yep.
Yeah, Ravens were looking good last year before all the injuries just kept piling on and on and on.
Yeah, absolutely. They look good every year, really. I mean, like as a Colts fan, like if I needed another AFC team for whatever reason, like if they would have signed Deshaun Watson for instance, then I probably would be a Ravens fan, which it's kind of crazy because of the whole Ray Lewis incident, but anyway, we'll move on.
Coach has said the same thing. We both said the same thing, that if we weren't, Giants fan and Cowboys fan respectively, if we were starting from scratch, we'd probably both be Ravens fans.
Well, I mean, if Coach would be a Ravens fan, maybe I'd choose another team. But the Patricia Militia, I like my little banner here for this one. So. Matt Patricia is going to be calling the offensive plays, or at least he has been in Pat's camp. Do we happen to know if there's been an issue with their normal play caller, or if this looks like something that's going to be a thing this season?
So I did I love doing these off-season shows with reporters that cover these teams because they're obviously a lot more knowledgeable than I am. Right now, no, trust me, like everybody on this panel is more knowledgeable tan me. I'm just regurgitating what everybody else tells me, okay? I'm not that smart. I talk to people who are smarter than me. Yes. I did a show with Mark Schofield, and he told me that right now the Patriots don't have an official offensive coordinator. Like they came out with their offensive designations for their teams. They designated nobody the offensive coordinator. They still believe that Bill Belichick is still going to call some plays. Patricia's going to call some plays. He's their head offensive guy, but his title is not offensive coordinator. Patricia does have experience as being an offensive coordinator. As we know, he did a bang-up job in Detroit with the Lions. Absolutely got them to where they are today. Sarcasm is on full there, but so he does have experience being on the offensive side of the ball, but he feels Patricia has always been a much better defensive guy. And if you look at the talent on that team, it's pretty bad. Like the running backs are fine, right? The running backs, they got decent running backs. Mac Jones is in my opinion, he's a slightly below average quarterback. Like he's not this great quarterback. I think he's going to be slightly below average. Teams are going to have a lot more tape on him this year than they did last year. So that's typically why you see a lot of quarterbacks struggle in year 2 is because teams finally have tape to put together and they can pay more attention and they can look at the little tiny things that you do that are your tells. So, like, I'm not thrilled with Mac Jones. They're going to want to run the ball and play defense, which is typically what New England does. So it shouldn't be too difficult for Matt Patricia to call those plays. But it's just a mess right now up there in New England. And I feel bad for the fans because they're so used to being winners. And they're finally going to see what it's like for almost every other NFL team outside of maybe the Green Bay Packers to have a team that is nothing more than just average to my opinion, slightly below average.
Hey, Mike Darling, our producer, if he is listening to this and producing editing the show, I need you to edit out that part where George Reed actually said that he feels sorry for Patriots fans, because I don't feel a damn bit sorry for him personally. The screw those guys.
I say that because I'm from New England and most of my family is New England and from New England. They still live there. Like I do kind of feel bad for them, but I mean. As a Dolphins fan, I am like F those guys.
Yeah, so you're just trying to make things right so that things aren't uncomfortable at Thanksgiving dinner. I get it.
I'm playing that. Oh, I don't care about that. As long as there's food, I don't care.
Exactly. Yeah, you'll make it uncomfortable just by eating the food the way you eat the food, right?
Have you not? Wait till you see me eat. You're going to be uncomfortable, Justin.
Speaking of eating, when we get off here, you and I need to talk behind the scenes about what we're doing in Canton for food here.
We got you.
All right.
So, I'll just say this, though, before we move on. Never stop believing in Bill Belichick. Never count that guy out. Never count that guy out. Why?
All right. So, Sean, you were going to say something?
So, for me, eventually Joe will come back. For me, anybody other than Bill Belichick calling the plays is great because, I mean, if there is no lead running back on the Patriots, I would just say forget him, like all of them. Like outside of Superflex, forget all of them. I don't want no part of Kendrick Bourne. I don't want no part of Hunter Henry. I don't want no part of Mac Jones. I don't want any part of Damian Harris. They all have sort of this like what they were talking about, break only when in case of a fire. I mean, waiver wire maybe, but Ramondre is the only particular person on this team that I would even consider drafting, and that's from the preseason smoke that he may actually get a lead back role and a passing game role. Even if he splits the carries but gets the passing game role, he becomes fantasy viable. Outside of that, I mean, Belichick's had this thing where he rotates in backs because, whatever. Nobody seems to have any idea why he rotates backs in and out the way he does other than to keep them fresh. And it makes them all fantasy irrelevant to a certain extent. So, I mean, if it's a different thing than Belichick, what normally does, great. But for me, I'm sort of with George in the factor of who really cares. I mean, outside of deep leagues, I mean, a lot of these guys are fantasy irrelevant or waiver wire guys that you pick up for a week or two and then drop. But sure.
Yeah, from a fantasy perspective, there's nothing to keep your eye on in New England at all. But, with Belichick, though, I mean, no one was expecting anything last year, and the team's still 10-7. So he's a magician.
Yeah, but they lost so much on that defense. Like they've lost their two starting linebackers. They lost J.C. Jackson, who's one of the best corners in the NFL.
Yes.
They lost their offensive coordinator. Like they've lost their offensive line coach who went over to the Giants. Like they've lost a lot. Like this is not the same team from last year.
It's not. It's not. But even last year's team wasn't. I realized they had. Still they had the offensive coordinator, and that's huge, McDaniels. And it's obviously Jackson's a great cornerback, and there was a lot of talent just all over the place that they did lose. But I don't know. I could see Belichick turning Matt Patricia the best offensive coordinator in the history of the game. Give it like 3 years.
Listen,
the man's a magician.
Bill Belichick is the same head coach / GM that traded a second-round pick for Mohamed Sanu.
I know. Hey, listen. There have always been bad trades. God, he went to 9 Super Bowls and six wins.
Yeah, but he did it all with Tom Brady. It helps to have the greatest quarterback in NFL history to cover your flaws.
He also had the greatest quarterback. Also had the greatest head coach in history. He did win 2 Super Bowls as defensive coordinator.
Also had the greatest referees in their pocket. But anyhow,
there is someone who's got one more Super Bowl ring than Brady
in the last 8 minutes, and I just zoned out. So I'm assuming you're done talking about them because enough people grovel about them anyway, and the Wild Turkey's starting to get to me. So we're going to move on to not a sponsor, by the way, but Wild Turkey if you are watching. All right. Deante Johnson resigns an extension. Also, Jared from the team, if you're watching, I know I cheated on my fast today with the Wild Turkey, but I really needed it, and it's helping a lot. Deante Johnson, $36.7 million, $27 million guaranteed. What does this say for Chase Claypool and the rest of the wide receivers there in Pittsburgh?
I don't think it says a whole lot. I think they had to pay him. The numbers actually say more about Johnson than they do anything else. So it's only $18 million a year. You just had Debo and DK both get $24 million over 3 years. So there's a certain amount of, I don't know if this is his team with trying to get more money down the road, trying to get him paid again before he hits 30. I'm not entirely sure because Pittsburgh is relatively quiet on things like this. But for me, it doesn't say a whole lot because I think Pickens eventually replaces Claypool if Claypool doesn't become what he thinks he is, which is a top 12 wide receiver. But I don't think the numbers actually say a whole lot. The numbers look a little funny considering the contracts we've seen recently. I mean, he actually got less money than Christian Kirk, who it was, he's been drastically more productive than Christian Kirk. So I would be interested to hear Deontay's side of it, but as far as Claypool and Pickens, I think Claypool eventually moves on and Pickens takes his role. But the numbers are really all that sticks out to me, and in contrast to the other wide receiver contracts we've seen this year.
It's a good deal. Fair deal.
The only thing it really does is it puts Deontay's value back up to where it was before the initial talks of him sitting out in anything as far as fantasy value-wise.
Very good. Is that it? Nobody else wants to chime in here?
Looks like a good deal for the Steelers, man. Considering all these wide receiver contracts flying around. Like Sean was just pretty much saying. I mean, it's a great deal for them.
For what it's worth, I kind of like what you guys are saying about the potential of this kind of pushing Chase Claypool out when Pickens jumps up. But as a Colts fan and knowing that Claypool went to Notre Dame, I love Chase Claypool for his certain skill set. Like, I don't think that he's the best all-around wide receiver, but given the right situation, he definitely can play a solid role player position for a team. So personally, just because he went to Notre Dame, I kind of would like to see him come to Indianapolis, personal, preference. But I agree, he's on the way out. But I mean, I don't think that Deante Johnson is technically an all-around solid wide receiver one either, to be fair.
He's a PPR machine.
Volume dependent.
Just except not when it counts. Then he drops it.
Well, I mean, he's played with a dead arm Big Ben.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
So,
That's
but
very fair.
no, I like this a lot for clearly the Pittsburgh, like having a 1-2 of Chase and Pickens, or not Chase and Pickens, I'm sorry, but Deontay and Pickens. That is going to be very, very good for Pittsburgh. I'm not sure if Claypool is really going to get what, paid what he thinks he's going to be paid. Next year, if they choose to cut him, it's only a dead cap of $593,000, which in the end was absolutely nothing. And you look at it, they drafted another wide receiver in this last draft, in Kelvin Austin III. And he is a shifty little slot guy who plays the same position as Chase Claypool. Listen, I'm not going to be surprised if Claypool is not even there next year.
Right.
They could cut him and save almost $1.5 million and use that money elsewhere to help bolster their line. So the biggest winner in that contract, in my opinion, honestly, is Kelvin Austin III.
That's interesting. Yeah. So I totally forget the point that I was going to get to.
I have one last Pittsburgh Steeler point. So Mitchell Trubisky, I think we can all agree, is probably not the solution. And it seems like right now we're trending towards Mason Rudolph QB1. That seems to be what's coming out of camp, is that he's the best performing quarterback. It's going to be Mitchell Trubisky until Kenny Pickett takes over. Yep. If Kenny Pickett is not the answer, which I don't think he is personally, this could be one of those where you buy the dip in dynasty. So if you're trying to get George Pickens, if you're trying to get Deontay Johnson, this might be the year, because if Pittsburgh goes out and makes a big splash, which is not really their thing, and they end up in the same situation that the Broncos are in now, you get a Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy reaction where they're drastically easier to buy last year in dynasty than they are this year. So I would buy the dip on the Pittsburgh receivers, specifically Pittman, not just because I'm a Georgia fan, but because he's one of the only college receivers I know because of how high of a recruit he was when he went to Georgia.
Yeah, and the point that I was going to get to with Chase Claypool is that he kind of those 2 or 3 games that he really stood out that rookie season just were at the wrong time. Like if they happen to come towards the end of the season, then you have something to kind of hold up on and say, see my potential, see what came out. But he kind of died off towards the end of the season again, and that's never good when it comes to negotiation tactics. Let's see, Kareem Hunt, he wants a trade. Is he going to get a trade? My little banner down here says that he's a perfect fit for the culture that the Browns have put forth in Cleveland. So I think he's a great fit in Cleveland. I don't know why Cleveland would ever let him go, but it sounds like they don't want to let him go, which makes complete sense. He's perfect in Cleveland. So I don't know. Does anybody want to talk about this?
So
they're not going to trade him.
No, he showed back up to camp today.
Yep.
But if you're talking about Kareem Hunt, the fantasy player, let's get away from Kareem Hunt a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Whatever he did personally off the field. Kareem Hunt, the fantasy player, I put a tweet on Twitter today and it never quite got an answer. I don't think there is a better situation out there that you can tell me today will be a better situation for him than where he is. Now, what he's looking for is a monetary problem. But as far as a fantasy perspective, if you're talking about Philly, if you're talking about wherever he might go, unless he goes to Houston or Atlanta, you're talking about potentially a downgrade for one of those guys who had top 12 running back weeks last year and is playing with a quarterback who checked down to the running backs at a 23% clip. And we all know that Nick Chubb's not catching the ball. Kareem Hunt, from a fantasy perspective, if he gets traded, actually goes down in value, in my opinion, unless he goes to Philly and they get rid of Miles Sanders. Because if he goes to Philly and they have Miles Sanders, then you're playing the which running back week is this game, and they don't. Then you're competing not only with Miles Sanders but with Jalen Hurts. And Philly is putting out all this smoke that they want Josh Jacobs and they want Kareem Hunt. Apparently, they don't want Miles Sanders. That seems to be the only thing I've grabbed from this weekend. But I think for Kareem Hunt, the fantasy player, it actually hurts his value to be traded because he's such an integral part of that offense. And the offense is so set up for him this year to be a PPR monster, given Brissett and then given Chubb's lack of catching ability and Watson being suspended.
I kind of think that Kareem Hunt would also be good in Seattle because I've always kind of felt like their coach is a sleaze too.
So I agree with Sean. I think he will, for fantasy purposes, he'll be most successful in Cleveland. The problem with it is what Kareem Hunt brings to the table, especially when you can almost pencil in Nick Chubb missing a game or two, right? Like it's going to happen. Starting running back, he's a bruiser. He's very talented, but he is a bruising running back. He puts his head down and will willing to run between the tackles. Him playing all 17 games probably not going to happen. He's going to miss a couple of games, and having that ultra valuable backup like a Kareem Hunt, who is more than capable to be a starter basically on almost every team in the NFL. Like he's a starter level backup, and I like Deante Johnson, but he's not the same level of a backup that Kareem Hunt is. He doesn't bring to the table the same skill set Kareem Hunt has. And then you look at this Browns team, like even if it is Jacoby Brissett, like Jacoby Brissett's going to do a lot of checkdowns. That's going to be where Kareem Hunt makes his money. He's such a valuable part to this team. And this team, honestly, if you look at it from top to bottom, they are set to win now. It's not a team that is outside of the question at quarterback. Like it's a team that is set to win right now. And Kareem Hunt on that team gives them more of a chance to win now than if they were to trade him. And let's face it, what is somebody trading for Kareem Hunt? Like a 6th round pick, 7th round pick? You're not getting a premium draft pick at this point for Kareem Hunt. That's just not going to happen. Because if you trade for him, you have to get assurances from him that he's going to re-sign a longer-term deal. You're going to have to increase the amount of money he's getting because he's on a very team-friendly deal right now in Cleveland. And the only reason he came to that deal in Cleveland is because of the history of what happened in Kansas City, and Cleveland is his hometown. So that's where he's from. So he gave them a hometown discount to come home. So you add in all those factors, you're not getting a premium draft pick for him, and he's more valuable to them on their team as the role that he has and what he provides that team than a 6th or 7th round draft pick next year. So I don't foresee them trading him at all. They're not going to trade him at all.
And for what it's worth, that move home, I mean, very likely could have been everything that Kareem Hunt needed as well. Like for all we know, like for everything that we do know or don't know about him since he's been there, like he's kept his nose clean. He's stayed out of trouble. We haven't seen anything in the news, and he's played well on the field when he had his chance. And so, I mean, if the dude has changed it and everything is great, I'm super proud of the fact that that he was able to go there and clean it up. So I talk a lot of trash about him, but also sometimes people can change. So I do want to kind of throw out that disclaimer, but also I want to bring up something else about the Cleveland Browns. I know it's not on the show sheet, but we were kind of talking about Jacoby Brissett there for a second, and that offense and really that team, the defense isn't as bad as they look last season. And on paper, like you can see the names, you can see that defense has real potential to step it up. They've got a somewhat decent to almost solid defense when they're all healthy. And then you got a really great running game. All you need at quarterback is a game manager. And Jacoby Brissett as a game manager has a pretty high win percentage. Like I wouldn't throw it past the Browns having an opportunity to make some noise and win some games this season, even with Jacoby Brissett. And the reason I was saying all this is because I want to throw out another possible board bet to you guys. I say that if Deshaun Watson does play this season, Jacoby Brissett will have had a better winning percentage with this same team this season than Deshaun Watson has if he plays.
Here's why I won't take that bet. If you look at the Browns' schedule, they legitimately can start this season 4-2.
Yep.
Like their start of the season, like the NFL, like gave this team the most cupcake start of any team in the NFL. It's absolutely ridiculous how easy their schedule is to start.
Do they play the Dolphins 4 times?
No, they don't. They play worse. They get like they play the Falcons. Here, I'll pull it up right now. But the Browns' schedule is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, while you're pulling that up, Sean, you were shaking your head no. Is that as in you're not taking the bet, or no, you don't agree with me?
I don't agree with you.
So you're going to take the Deshaun side?
Is there a minimum number of games? Like,
no, just if they both play, it's best win percentage. Like, I honestly think that Brissett's going to play just as many, maybe even more games than Deshaun does, and I'm willing to take that hit on the percentage.
I mean, I've seen Jacoby Brissett play in Indianapolis and in Miami. It was pretty bad in both places.
Well, in Indianapolis, before his leg injury, he only lost 1 game. He was 6-1, and then he had the leg injury, and all of a sudden, everybody wanted to get rid of him.
And in Miami, to be fair to Miami and Jacoby Brissett, he was playing behind the worst offensive line in all of football. So, but here's the Browns' schedule. They start out with the Panthers, which is a game they can win. Then they get the Jets. Then they get the Steelers, and who knows what's going on at the quarterback position with the Steelers. Then they get the Falcons. Legitimately, they could win all 4 of those games based on running the ball and their defense alone. They'll probably lose to the Chargers, and then I honestly feel the Patriots is a toss-up. So that I mean, they could start 5-1, 4-2 with Jacoby Brissett.
I mean, they won last year with Case Keenum.
Easy.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous. It's like the worst teams outside of the Chargers and potentially the Patriots. They're gonna be a bad team this year, but I think their defense and their run game on the Browns can beat the Patriots. But it's absolutely a cupcake schedule to start, and that game against the Patriots is even in Cleveland. So, I mean, Jacoby Brissett could start the season 5-1 legitimately, and I would not be surprised with that schedule. The rest of the schedule from there, it gets a lot harder. They get the Ravens, the Bengals, the Dolphins, the Bills, the Bucks. Then they get a cupcake with Tennessee. Then they get the Bengals, the Ravens again, the Saints, the Commanders, and then Week 17 is again against the Steelers.
Did you say Tennessee was a cupcake? I love it.
The Texans are a cupcake team.
Oh, you said my bad. I thought you said Tennessee.
No. I think Tennessee is one of the better teams in the AFC.
Right.
The Texans are a cupcake. So, like, all of their difficult games are Week 7 and on, except for like maybe 1 or 2. But so,
all right. All right. So nobody's going to take me up on that bet?
No, it's a fool's bet.
Oh.
Here's the only thing I will say on that. If that did happen and Jacoby Brissett came out 5-1, and with all the turmoil that's going, and the tough schedule and stuff like that, there is a good possibility that if Deshaun came in and stuff like that, he might not win 5 games with that tough schedule in the second half.
We can only hope.
Yep. And wouldn't you want to leave Brissett in there if he started out 5-1 just to kind of get through this season?
Uh-huh.
Justin, honestly, here's what we hope. We hope he comes back. First play of the game, he dropped back, non-contact injury. There goes his Achilles, and he rips it both ACLs. That would be fantastic.
Except the non-contact part. I hope he gets hit from 3 different angles.
So to not be violent towards another individual, the point that would prove Justin's point, but not quite, is Deshaun Watson is outside of Clemson has never really proved himself to be a winning quarterback. He is a top 5 fantasy quarterback without, I don't think, a whole lot of question. But he went,
I won't make any fantasy bets on that comparison.
he went 4-12 his last season, and he threw a lot of garbage time yards, which would play in with a top 5 fantasy quarterback.
Yeah.
I think Justin has a point, but I think the point is more on Deshaun Watson and his inability to win. Maybe that's because he's not a leader. Maybe that's because other players knew and just didn't follow him. Maybe it's because the Texans are a horrible organization. No way.
That's it. That's it right there. I think he has the team to win. I think he has the team to win, but I'm just saying I think that the type of team that it is, like if you have a good running game, a good defense, a great offensive line, then all you need is that game manager. That's all you need. And I've said it 1,000 times on this show. You don't need somebody that's going to try to go out there and prove himself like Deshaun Watson most likely will try to do. He's going to try to prove that he earned $300 million or whatever the hell that joke of a contract was. Yeah. Anyway, we're back at Deshaun Watson again, and I
never ends.
Given him too much
time. It's not our fault. It's Deshaun's fault.
Let's talk about somebody we can actually root for, at least at this point. The guy that's bouncing back from that incredible car accident issue that he had in college, Travon Walker. Somebody put in the notes that he had an absolutely monster game. At the Hall of Fame game, which I got to tell you, whoever put that in the notes, I'm proud of you because that means you actually watched the Hall of Fame game. Joey, I love it. Thank you for putting in that kind of effort and time because you were literally the only person on the planet.
You know what? Okay, you know what? He didn't actually have a monster game. I didn't watch the whole game. I just watched his highlights. I should just say this. The guy looks like a friggin' monster. I should say that. And he did play well, but it's limited snaps. I shouldn't have said he had a monster game.
I don't pay attention to the offensive line stuff as much. Was he actually going up against the other team's number 1, or was it a bunch of guys that are going to be cut next week?
I think it was their second string. I watched the first.
I don't know. It was the Raiders. Rich, who was he going up against? I'm not sure.
I'm a Raiders fan, and I didn't even watch that game.
I wasn't familiar with the name, so it was probably a backup tackle. But he was the guy. He is huge. He is fast. I mean, it's like it's almost like he's playing like when he's tackling the quarterback. It looked like an adult tackling a child. He's absolutely huge, and he reminded me of Jason Pierre-Paul out there. Just really tall, long limbs. He's 6'5", 275 pounds. The guy looks like an absolute beast out there.
So
it was fun watching him. It was fun watching him play. It really was. I did not watch the whole game.
I loved the fact that on the very first play of the game, he got a roughing the passer. That was fantastic.
Well, and apparently it was like kind of like ticky-tack.
It was very, very questionable. I will say that much.
Yeah.
Like if it were a regular season game, they'd probably let it slide, right?
Probably, yeah. I mean, it looked like a ghost, a ghost roughing the passer.
Gotcha.
Unless, of course, he was hitting a quarterback down in Tampa. Then, for sure, it would have been out 15 yards. No questions asked. But no, I watched the first 2 quarters. He looked impressive. He did get a sack on the time that he was in there. The kid's he looks good. He is built like a monster, and I think Jacksonville is going to be very happy with what he can do for them long term.
And a good feel-good story. So,
yep.
Unlike that good feel-good story, we got Danny being Danny in New York. So I was going to skip over this one, but we got Joe on the show. I got to give you a chance to try to defend your quarterback.
Hey, listen, I always said Danny DeVito would never make it as a player in the NFL. So we're
All
talking
right.
Danny Dimes.
That's right. That's right. Evidently, he's looking kind of bad in camp, but that also just means that he's
It's like,
true to form.
yeah, he's looking like, you know, he's got his good days and his good days and his bad days.
Well, when you see one of those good days, send me the film. I'd like to see it. All right, so we've got the Denver backfield. Are we all in? And the reason I worded it this way is because we know that Javonte Williams is being drafted a lot higher than Melvin. So do we spend that ADP money on and I say that like it's an auction league, but when you talk money, I'm talking like, do we spend that higher draft pick on Javonte? Do we wait and take Melvin Gordon late and take a chance of missing out now that the news have come out that he's taken 45% of the snaps so far? Or where do you fall on this?
So go ahead, Sean.
So this was a talk within our own chat. Nino is a big Javonte guy, I guess, or somebody was. And
well, Nino's like Joe. He loves everybody.
So
I'm sure Mike is as well. Dirty Jobs, I'm sure he's into Javonte. I like Javonte too. He's a good player.
From the fantasy perspective, I would take Melvin Gordon 10 times out of 10 if this is going to be the split. I don't think it's going to be the split. I think it's going to be closer to 60-40 or 65-35. However, we don't know. And Melvin Gordon still had juice last year. So they're going to use him because Javonte Williams has never been a primary workhorse back anywhere he's been probably since high school. He had Michael Carter in North Carolina, and he's had Melvin Gordon here. So for my dollars, no, because you're going to have to spend an end of second round, early third round pick, if not higher, depending on the league that you're in. Melvin Gordon's going somewhere in the 9th or 10th round. He's going even past the running back dead zone that people talk about. For me, it's Melvin Gordon specifically because Javonte is drafted around the same time as Alvin Kamara. I'm taking Kamara 10 times out of 10 with Javonte.
Oh, yeah.
For me, Javonte has all the talent in the world. However, he hasn't proven it outside of the one game. So for me, it's going to be Melvin Gordon. Everyone makes fun of how many drafts I'm in. I don't have any Javonte Williams in any of my leagues other than in Dynasty. So I don't have any of them. I have a bunch of Melvin Gordon because if Javonte gets hurt, Melvin Gordon will take over that load, and it will be Mike Boone or whoever's behind him sort of taking up the Melvin Gordon role. So Melvin Gordon is the ultimate handcuff because he can be flexed from a fantasy perspective on a weekly basis because he's going to get them 10 to 12 touches.
Yeah.
But he's also the ultimate handcuff. He's Tony Pollard with probably a bigger role.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. I said before I love Spiller as a handcuff, like maybe my favorite handcuff, and even over Pollard, to be honest with you. But you know what? That's an awesome point. Melvin Gordon, it makes so much sense. And I like Williams. I mean, Javonte, I think he could be a good NFL running back, but I definitely don't. I'm not as high on him as a lot of other people who have this guy high in the second round. I'd be more to believe if I could maybe get him somewhere in a standard league third round or something like that. I kind of go with it. I'd still be kind of nervous because like Sean was saying, he's not really a guy who's got a history of being like a Nick Chubb where you're handing the ball off or Derrick Henry, where you can really rely on this game pretty much 15 out of 16 or 16 out of 17 games now.
Yeah, and honestly, full disclosure, I've never been a big Melvin Gordon fan, or at least early on in his career, I wasn't a big fan of his. And I used to argue with the buddies in my home league all the time about how bad Melvin Gordon was because he would average 2.5 yards per carry, and that's not even hyperbolic. His first 3 years, it was barely more than 2.5 yards per carry, but he always found a way to just fall into the end zone and got a ton of touchdowns and made him fantasy relevant, which made me look like a buffoon. So then I get off of my high horse because he starts to actually start playing well between the 20s as well. And I start deciding, hey, all of a sudden I like the guy, but now it's too late because everybody else was already higher on him. And now I have an opportunity to jump in and get him. So I'm right there with you, Sean. I've got a lot of shares of Melvin Gordon this year. And as much as I love Javonte, that price is just too high. Yeah, Rich.
So I am high on Javonte Williams still to a certain degree. Look, based off our rankings that we had, I had him ranked as the fourth running back in my rankings. Okay.
That was a month ago too, to be fair.
It was. And like I said, I'm still high on him, but with all the talk and everything, I am dropping him back in my rankings. I mean, I dropped him back about 3 spots because of that. Still, though, I'm willing to take him in like what you guys are talking about around the 3rd round. Everything. Look, talent and skill always rises to the top, and he has plenty of it. Even though he had limited opportunity last year with Melvin Gordon there, every time he was in there, he looked better than Melvin Gordon. Okay, that was a true fact. You could never take him down with the first tackle. Always broke that first tackle and kept on going. Yeah, I am dropping him back, but I am still, like I said, because of all this talk, but he's still high value for me as far as even floor-wise. Because what you guys are talking about, injury to Javonte Williams, it could be the other way around. Once Melvin Gordon gets hurt like he always does,
yeah,
who's the main guy there? Javonte Williams. Young, he's only 23 years old.
Yeah, I'm still high on Melvin Gordon. I think you're going to see more of a split in that backfield than some people actually want to see for fantasy purposes. I think it's going to be not to the extreme as it was last year, where their numbers were almost identical. Like it was almost 50-50 split. The only difference is Melvin Gordon. He got more of those prime touches down by the goal line. They trusted him more by the goal line to punch it in. That's why he had a lot more touchdowns on the ground. Deontay did. Bless you. Listen, they brought Melvin Gordon back for a reason. They could have gone out and got a lot cheaper. I mean, they paid $2.5 million guaranteed for him this year. Like, that's not a lot of money for a running back, but it's not cheap either. Like, you could go out and get a lot cheaper running backs than what you paid Melvin Gordon to come back. They're going to utilize this guy. That's why they brought him back. They trust him. He does bring that veteran leadership. Yes, I do believe Javonte, at this point in their careers, is clearly the more talented, but the talent doesn't always win out. I don't believe that. I think sometimes because Javonte is not nearly as good as a pass blocker as Melvin Gordon, so they're going to have Melvin Gordon in there in those pass blocking situations, especially with the new quarterback and Russell Wilson. You know, they're going to rely on that veteran leadership in that backfield. It's just, I think you're going to see more of a 60-40 split, possibly 55-45, but I lean more towards 60-40. I don't think you're going to see more than 60% of the touches going to Javonte, and therefore I can't have him being drafted in the first round where his current ADP has been this offseason. Like, it's way too high. You need to temper the expectations with this guy.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, we know both of these guys have their own independent value. So at the very least, just like Sean and Rich both said, if one of them gets hurt, the other is dynamic. So it's worth the risk either way. That's why I kind of worded the banner that way. Should we be all in? We got to get at least one of them, right?
Yeah, I mean, last year, Melvin Gordon, he averaged 4.5 yards per touch. Like, it's not like, he was out there pushing – 2.5, 3 yards a carry. No, he was averaging 4.5 on the season. He almost had 1,000 yards. He would have gone over 1,000 yards if he didn't get injured. He added, 8 touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, 10 total. He's going to be involved in this offense again. It's not going to be the one-man show that everybody was hoping it was going to be.
Hey, just real quick, while we were sitting here talking, a buddy of mine from back in the military days just sent me this old picture. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but that's not a young Ben Affleck like you might think, but that's yours truly. That's yours truly.
You look good, man. You look good.
Way back
and I've been the one person out of the 5 on the show right now who has not served in the armed forces, and I just want to say thank you for your service, John.
Absolutely, Joe.
And I also want to thank you for Justin for putting your hat on.
Did you guys see that haircut?
I like it, Justin.
I'm going for a particular look, but we'll talk about that at Canton. It's gonna
be man bun in a few months.
Yeah, we'll talk about it after I get off here. But real quick, we got 2 more items. We're going to knock these out real quick. Somebody, I know Nino posted earlier in the chat here that he wanted to talk about Jalen Darden being a potential sleeper. No, nobody else. I didn't put it in the notes, but I also didn't completely disagree with it when I saw it.
He's going to be the wide receiver 5 on that team. Like,
Special teams.
Yeah, I mean, come on, are we serious? Like, okay, in Dynasty, maybe something there, right? But let's talk about your average redraft league. This guy's not getting drafted. He's the 5th wide receiver behind Mike Evans, Julio Jones, Chris Godwin, and Russell Gage. He's the 5th wide receiver. And then you're talking about, what they got at the tight end. They're probably going to use Cameron Brate a lot more than people realize. And then you got Leonard Fournette catching passes off backfield. Like, get Jalen Darden out of here. Come on, you know better than this.
Let's move on.
And screw Tom Brady. All right, so we got Gino and Drew. They're battling for the quarterback spot. Personally, I think they should go Gino, but honestly, I don't really care. I don't think it matters. I don't like either of them a huge amount. I think it does help the others, the wide receivers in that offense a little more if Gino's the guy. But personally, I'm avoiding that entire team. I don't think I've had a single mock or a single actual draft where I've taken a single Seahawk player. And I know Rashad Penny is the guy, but he's also the guy that always gets hurt, and it's just so much about that team at every position that's nothing but question mark. Even like DK, like as much as I want DK and his talent, I think he's still going too high because you just don't know at quarterback. And he's a mental head case. The dude, like, I know that Nate was kind of somewhat joking about it in the chat earlier, but I completely agree with that. There's a decent to solid chance that he goes unhinged this season, and he's another Antonio Brown. Like the guy's a head case, but I don't know. I don't like anything about the Bucs.
Couple things. We are speaking about NFL players. Okay,
Fair.
As talented as we might not think they ain't. Look, they're all NFL players. They're all talented and everything.
Very
okay.
fair.
Yep.
They're going to be playing behind in all games and everything. Look, I got luckily to be one of the people that had to project their season stats for this year that we're working on right now. And oh my goodness, that was one of the longest ones it took me to do. As bad as the QB play is and stuff like that, they're going to be behind games. They're going to be throwing behind to catch up. Who would you rather have, Geno Smith or Locke?
Gino, easy.
Gino.
I have Geno playing the first 4 games in my stats and Locke taking over in the 5th game I'm on.
Locke
with
was
you, Rich.
horrendous.
After
Last
4
time.
games, they're going to need to tank, so it makes sense.
So that's what I'm looking at, and I still see Lockett and Metcalf being the only options there. They are gonna have some points, and they're gonna have some fantasy value. Yeah, he might go off the hinges and stuff like that, but look, these are NFL players we are talking about.
So
I want all the Lockett. Give me all Lockett. At his value, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
to George's point, I don't know, one of these ways. To George's point, Lockett was actually more productive last year with Geno than DK was. DK had a bunch of really fluke games. Like he had a game where he caught a ball and then he broke a tackle and ran for like 80 yards. But his games with Geno were really bad. Now, granted, his games with broken finger Russ weren't much better. But Lockett is probably the only guy I would draft on that team, and it's specifically tied to his value. If it's Geno, if it's Lock, I don't want any of them. Because the last time we saw Drew Lock, he was horrible. Now, to Rich's point, he was NFL horrible. However, he was still horrible.
Yeah, he was still 1,000 times better than any of us. So when I say that a player sucks, please don't come at me if you see me in a dark alley, because I mean, obviously you're all incredible athletes, but damn, I'm not drafting any of you. All right, hey guys, that's definitely like way past all the time that we have for today. We've been trying to get out of here for like 40 minutes, and Rich even sent me in the private chat that we need to get rolling. I mean, that man, I mean, he works 20 hours a day, so of course. But I appreciate the 4 of you guys taking time out of your busy schedules to meet up with us and do this roundtable. It's always fun. To anybody that's still watching this show, God bless you. But patreon.com/toyless-titles. Thank you very much for supporting the show. Make sure that you hit that like, that subscribe, that bell so you get the notifications, and that 5-star Apple review like our boy Chris Hine, who won the prize package. And like I said, Rich is sending him a shirt, and Nino's sending him a prize package. And so you should be seeing that in the mail here pretty soon. So thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night.